imagine this. It's a wildly stressful Tuesday.
Oh, we all know those Tuesdays.
Right. You are just drowning in deadlines. Your inbox is an absolute disaster zone. And, you haven't slept well in days.
Just run on empty.
Exactly. And suddenly, a coworker, maybe someone you don't even know that well, walks right up to your desk and sits down this fresh, perfectly crafted latte.
Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. They smile, they say, they noticed you look like you could use a boost, and they just walk away.
A completely random act of kindness.
Yeah. But here's the thing. What is your immediate, visceral reaction in that moment? Does your heart just swell with pure, unadulterated joy?
For most people, probably not.
No. Or does your stomach suddenly drop? Does your jaw tighten up just a fraction of an inch as this new, incredibly loud alarm bell goes off in your brain?
The alarm that's screaming, "Oh, no!"
Yes. Screaming, "Oh, no, now I owe them a coffee."
Right, how do I repay this?
When do I repay this? What if I forget?
It's the great unspoken paradox of human kindness, really.
Yeah.
The very gestures that are meant to, alleviate our stress.
Yeah.
They so often become the exact things that compound it.
And that is exactly the paradox we are unpacking today in this deep dive. Because, we spend so much of our lives absorbing information on how to be better givers.
Oh, absolutely. There's an entire industry built on it.
Exactly. How to be more generous, how to anticipate the needs of others, and just put good out into the world, which is a noble pursuit.
Of course it is.
But today, we're pivoting to the vastly under-discussed, deeply uncomfortable inverse of that equation. We're looking at the psychology of receiving.
Which is fascinating because we rarely talk about it.
We never talk about it. We are going to explore why genuine acts of goodwill routinely trigger this fight-or-flight response in our nervous systems.
The heavy burden of what the source material calls receiving guilt.
Receiving guilt, yes. And we'll look at how we can fundamentally rewire our brains to step out of this exhausting ledger of debts and into a guilt-free cycle of connection.
It's going to require a big shift in perspective.
For sure. So to help navigate the mechanics of why we do this to ourselves and, how to stop, I'm joined by our resident expert.
Thanks for having me. What's fascinating here is that this is a profound psychological blind spot for so many of us.
Yeah, blind spot is the perfect word for it.
If you examine the self-improvement landscape, the societal imbalance is just glaring. We are drowning in guidance on how to serve others.
Be a radical giver, be a servant leader.
Right, all of that. Yet there is an absolute vacuum of guidance on how to cope with the profound somatic discomfort of being on the receiving end of that same generosity.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. We've essentially trained an entire society of pitchers and absolutely no catchers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, which means we just get hit in the face with the ball every time someone tries to do something nice.
That's a very accurate, if slightly painful, way to put it.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Before we can even begin to talk about the solutions or the philosophical shifts required to fix this, we have to deeply analyze the anatomy of the problem itself.
We need to look at the actual mechanism of that discomfort.
Because that tightening in the jaw, that stomach drop I mentioned earlier, that is not a metaphor.
No, not at all.
It's a highly specific, documented physiological phenomenon, right? When someone steps in to help, the recipient's body often literally stiffens. They brace themselves.
Psychologically, we really need to understand what is happening in the nervous system in that exact moment.
Yeah, break that down for us.
So when you are handed that unprompted latte or, someone offers to take a massive project off your plate at work.
Which should be a relief.
It should. But your brain is not interpreting it as a gift. It's actually processing it as a social threat.
A threat?
Yes. The sympathetic nervous system flares up. That bracing you just described, that's an evolutionary defense mechanism.
Wait, really? Evolution made us afraid of free coffee.
In a way, yes. Because from a very early age, we are deeply programmed to understand that in polite society, nothing is truly free.
Right. The social contract.
Precisely. And it goes deeper than just learning basic etiquette, like saying please and thank you.
How so?
Well, in our earliest developmental stages, we absorb the mechanics of transactional sociology. We are taught that receiving requires an equal and opposite reaction.
Like physics, but for manners.
Exactly. You receive a birthday gift, you are obligated to send a thank you card, and then eventually purchase a gift of similar value in return.
Oh, yeah. The mental math of, well, they spent about $30 on me, so I need to spend $30 on them.
Right. Or someone hosts you for dinner, you bring wine, and then the timer immediately starts ticking on when you must host them in return.
It's exhausting just talking about it.
It is. Now, this reciprocal altruism, this is how early human tribes survived. It's the glue of early communities. If I share my food with you today, you'll share yours with me tomorrow.
So it started out as a survival mechanism.
It did. But in the modern human mind, it quietly mutates into something incredibly toxic.
The mutation is where it gets dangerous, I think, because it stops being about social cohesion and starts becoming a metric for human worth.
That's the core issue, yes.
The conditioning shifts from, I should return this favor because it's polite, to a much darker internal monologue. Like, if I cannot repay this favor, I have no value.
And that right there is the core mechanism of receiving guilt. It is a profound, deeply internalized conditional worth.
Conditional worth. That's heavy.
It's incredibly heavy. You begin to equate your fundamental human dignity with your ability to constantly balance this invisible ledger.
The ledger. Yes, that's exactly what it feels like.
You view yourself not as a human being who is worthy of care simply for existing, but as an accountant of social debts.
An accountant of social debts. Wow.
And when you view reality through that lens, you can see exactly why the body stiffens. The person bringing you a coffee isn't handing you a gift.
They're handing you a debt.
Exactly. They are placing a burden on your ledger that you now have to manage, track, and eventually clear.
It's like someone tosses you a beautiful, delicate present, but your brain immediately registers it as a ticking game of hot potato. You just want to get rid of the obligation.
That's a perfect analogy, because if every single interaction is a ledger of debts, human connection stops being organic.
It becomes this exhausting, high-stakes accounting exercise.
It turns human connection into a stressful game of ping pong, where you are terrified of dropping the ball. And what happens when a game becomes too stressful to play?
You just walk away from the table.
Exactly. When every act of goodwill requires an equal and opposite reaction, people actually begin to fear goodwill itself. They insulate themselves.
I've seen people do this. I mean, honestly, I've caught myself doing this.
It's very common.
You isolate yourself, you reject offers of help, you refuse to let anyone pay for lunch.
The classic fight over the check.
Right. Because if you don't let anyone do anything for you, you never owe anyone anything, your ledger stays at zero.
It feels safe.
It does feel safe. But a ledger at zero means your life is completely devoid of deep intimacy.
It is a protective mechanism that ultimately starves you of connection. You are protecting yourself from the anxiety of the debt, sure.
Yeah.
But you are also locking yourself out of the warmth of community. And the tragedy here is the secondary emotion that follows.
What's the secondary emotion?
The people who struggle with this isolation often repeatedly fall into a state of intense self-blame.
Oh, because they know they're pushing people away.
Right. They recognize they aren't rejoicing in the kindness of others. They see themselves pushing people away, and then they experience depression over their own inability to simply be happy that someone was nice to them.
Oh, man. So it's like a painful recursive loop of anxiety followed by guilt for having the anxiety.
It's cognitive dissonance in its purest form.
You should be happy. You physically cannot feel happy, so you hate yourself for being ungrateful.
It's a terrible cycle to be stuck in.
So if receiving feels this traumatic for so many people, what is the immediate defense mechanism? Like, how do we break the loop in the moment?
Well, the sources offer a surprisingly blunt answer to this.
Okay, what is it?
Because the most jarring piece of this whole puzzle is the blunt realization that you are allowed to just say no.
Wait, just say no.
The radical right to refuse.
But that sounds entirely counterintuitive to everything we've just established about the social contract.
It does feel like heresy, doesn't it?
It feels like the ultimate social sin. We are taught that rejecting a gift is just incredibly rude.
But the reality is, people often reflexively want to reject goodwill out of fear of that ledger we just talked about.
Sure, they want to, but they don't.
The argument here, though, is that the right to decide whether to accept a gift or a favor belongs entirely to the receiver. The autonomy is yours.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little bit.
Go ahead.
Because practically speaking, isn't that incredibly destructive?
In what way?
Like, if my neighbor brings over a freshly baked pie to welcome me to the neighborhood, and I just look at them and say, no, thank you, I cannot accept this.
Right.
Aren't I deeply insulting them? Aren't I denying their worth as a giver and essentially setting the relationship on fire before it even begins?
This raises an important question, and it's the exact friction point that keeps people trapped in the ledger.
Right, because the fear of that awkwardness is so strong.
We project a catastrophic outcome onto the act of refusal. But let's look at the actual psychology of what happens when you decline an offer gracefully but firmly.
Okay, what actually happens?
Yes, the giver might show a temporary expression of disappointment.
Like a flinch.
Exactly. They might seem taken aback or deflated for a brief moment. In Japanese, the sources use the term shinuke, which means feeling sort of let down or disappointed.
Their ego experiences a minor bruised expectation.
Yes, but that emotion is incredibly fleeting.
It's a micro-expression of rejection on their part, sure, but it passes.
It passes because it does not mean you're fundamentally denying their value as a human being. It's just a minor, temporary social friction.
Okay.
Now, contrast that momentary friction with the alternative.
Yeah.
Think about the immense psychological energy it takes to force yourself to accept something you know you cannot emotionally afford to repay.
Oh, wow. The cognitive dissonance of the fake smile. We have all been there.
It's exhausting.
It is. I remember a time, years ago, a friend bought me this incredibly expensive ticket to a concert for my birthday.
A very generous gift.
Super generous. But I was completely broke at the time. I couldn't afford to even buy the drinks at the venue, let alone reciprocate for their birthday, which was like 3 months later.
So what'd you do?
I pasted on this massive theatrical smile. I thanked them profusely, but inside, my stomach was in absolute knots.
Because the ledger just went deep into the red?
Exactly. And for the entire 3 months leading up to their birthday, I secretly resented them for putting me in that position. I resented the gift.
Exactly. You performed gratitude while internally drowning in a sense of inadequacy.
Which feels terrible.
What we fail to realize is that forcing acceptance out of obligation actually damages the relationship far more deeply in the long run than a polite refusal ever could.
Because of that resentment.
Yes, your hidden resentment creates an invisible wedge between you and the giver.
Because you aren't actually present with them anymore. You're just managing a crisis. You're managing a debt.
An honest, transparent reaction, even if it's a polite refusal, is vastly more sincere than a fake, guilt-ridden acceptance.
That makes a lot of sense.
Honestly, declining is crucial for protecting your own mental health and, ironically, for protecting the integrity of the relationship.
Sincerity is the bedrock of connection.
Exactly. You might say, you know, I am so deeply moved by this gesture, but I simply cannot accept this right now.
That honors the relationship far more than lying to their face with a smile while you secretly panic.
You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else's ego warm.
Wow, you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else's ego warm. That is such a crucial reframing. Operating from a place of authenticity rather than a place of fear-based obligation.
It changes everything.
But let's look at the other side of the coin for a second.
Okay.
What happens when we do want to accept the kindness? Like, we want the pie, we want the help with the project, we crave the connection, but we still want to avoid that crushing weight of the debt.
We want the good without the bad.
Right. How do we accept the gesture without activating the ledger?
This is where we have to introduce a massive paradigm shift. We have to fundamentally alter the architecture of how we view exchange.
And to do that, based on the text, we need to look at two deeply profound Japanese concepts, ongeshi and onokuri.
These concepts are really the key to dismantling the ledger.
So ongeshi is essentially the system we have been describing this whole time, right?
Correct.
It is returning the favor directly back to the original giver. It's the tit-for-tat, one-to-one exchange. You scratch my back, I scratch yours.
It's direct reciprocation.
But onokuri is a completely different architectural model. It translates roughly to paying it forward.
Yes.
And the philosophy here states that kindness does not disappear if it goes unreturned to the original source. It isn't a debt that defaults.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Instead, kindness changes shape and it moves to the next person.
If you want to visualize the difference, look at the geometry of the two concepts.
Okay, paint a picture for us.
Ongeshi, that direct return of favors, is a closed loop. It's like a two-person tennis match.
A tennis match.
Yes. I hit the ball to you, you hit the ball back to me. We are trapped on this court together, constantly swinging, constantly trying to make sure neither of us holds the ball for too long.
It's exhausting and it's entirely self-contained.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting because it's claustrophobic, right? If I give you a book I think you'll love, and the next day you hand me a different book of the exact same monetary value just to clear the debt.
It ruins the sentiment.
Totally. I don't feel closer to you. I feel like we just conducted a sterile business transaction. You didn't actually accept my gift, you just neutralized it.
You neutralize the vulnerability of being a receiver. which frankly robs the giver of the joy of having given.
You rob them of the joy. Wow.
But Onokuri paying it forward is not a tennis match. It is not a closed loop.
What is it then?
It operates more like a single drop of water hitting a pond. The impact happens at the center, but the energy doesn't just bounce back up to the sky.
It ripples outward.
Yes, expanding in concentric circles.
So the mechanics of Onokuri mean you take what person A gave you, and instead of feeling the anxiety of turning around and handing it right back to person A to clear your ledger.
Which is the tennis match.
Right. You take that goodwill, you let it nourish you, and then you deliver it to someone who is more in need of it.
You pass it down the line. The text talks about not trapping humanity, or moral duty jingi, in Japanese, in a narrow one-on-one relationship.
By letting the goodwill flow outward, you relieve the immense pressure on that single relationship.
You are no longer in a standoff with the giver.
Because if it's just the two of you constantly exchanging favors to make sure the ledger is balanced to the exact penny, it becomes suffocating.
It really does.
But wait, how do we reconcile this with the original giver? Like, if I don't return the favor, won't they feel slighted?
This is a very common fear.
I feel like there is a really comforting assertion to be made here about human nature based on the text.
Yes, and that is, for the original giver, a simple, genuine word of gratitude is almost always plenty.
We constantly project our own transactional anxieties onto the giver, don't we?
We do. We assume they are sitting at home with a spreadsheet, checking off whether we return the favor.
Like they're auditing our friendship.
Exactly. But psychological studies on altruism show that when people give genuinely, they experience what is known as the giver's high.
The giver's high, like a rush of endorphins.
Yes, endorphins and oxytocin. They are simply expressing care. A sincere, vulnerable thank you is the complete closing of that emotional loop for them. It validates their gesture.
So when we obsess over a tangible, equal return, we're the ones making the relationship rigid.
We're the ones introducing the spreadsheet.
We kill the spirit of the gift with the anxiety of the return. But with Onokuri, you accept the gift, you feel the warmth of the gesture without guilt, and then, a week later, you see a stranger struggling with their groceries.
Or a junior colleague stressed about a presentation.
Right, and you step in to help them. The energy of the original kindness isn't lost, it's transformed.
It is a much healthier ecological model for human interaction. It allows resources, whether emotional, temporal, or financial, to flow to where they are most needed.
Instead of being trapped in that endless ping-pong match.
Right, between two people who might not even really need the resources they're exchanging.
Okay, so we make this mental shift. We decide, you know what? I am done playing the exhausting tennis match of Ongeshi.
I'm throwing out the racket.
Throwing out the racket, I am embracing Onokuri. I am going to start passing kindness forward. And crucially, I am going to start giving to others unconditionally without expecting any return from the people I help.
It sounds beautiful.
It sounds utopian. It sounds like a blueprint for a perfect society. But based on the sources, implementing this in the real world is incredibly messy.
It is incredibly messy because you are introducing a completely foreign behavioral paradigm into an entrenched system.
Yeah, you're breaking the rules.
Whenever you change the rules of engagement, there's going to be immense friction.
And the specific friction here is wild to me.
How so?
When you actually start giving without expecting anything back, the recipients of your kindness rarely react with pure joy.
Oh, hardly ever.
They often feel bewildered or even deeply suspicious and uncomfortable.
Yes.
Like the text notes, they might temporarily create distance from you or act cold and blunt. And I'm just thinking, if I pay for the person behind me in the drive-thru, or I offer to help a neighbor fix their fence on a Saturday with 0 strings attached.
Why would they act cold?
Yeah. Wouldn't they just be thrilled someone did something nice?
It seems counterintuitive until you remember everything we just discussed about our deep neurological conditioning.
The ledger again.
The ledger. People are operating on the very ledger system you just decided to abandon. They simply aren't used to unconditional goodwill.
In a society built on reciprocal altruism, an unconditional gift breaks the rules of evolutionary game theory.
Exactly. If we assume everyone is playing tit for tat, an unprompted move of pure generosity completely scrambles their radar.
Right. Their internal alarm bells start ringing because their reality is governed by the ledger. When you give them something for free, their brain immediately suspects a hidden trap.
They think, what is the catch? Why are they doing this?
What immense unspoken favor are they going to demand from me next week?
They are waiting for the other shoe to drop. So their coldness, that blunt distance they put up, is actually just a defense mechanism.
They are trying to shield themselves from the invisible debt they assume you are secretly placing on them.
It is a tragic misinterpretation, but a completely logical one based on their conditioning.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense.
They have likely been burned before by someone who performed a favor and then weaponized it, holding it over their head for years.
We've all met that person.
So when someone is genuinely, unconditionally kind, the brain misinterprets the altruism as a strategic threat.
So how do you navigate that? If I decide to live this way and I am met with suspicion and coldness, it's going to make me want to give up and go back to the tennis match.
The key, according to the text, is absolute steadfastness. You cannot panic, and you cannot get defensive.
It's hard not to take it personally, though.
It is. But if you get defensive and say, well, why are you being so ungrateful? I just helped you. You instantly prove their suspicions right.
Oh, wow.
You prove that your gift came with the expectation of a specific emotional reaction.
Oh, that's deep. Demanding they act grateful is really just another form of demanding repayment. It's an emotional tax.
Precisely. You have to hold your ground in your new philosophy and give them the space to process the anomaly. You have to absorb their bewilderment without internalizing it.
Just let them be confused for a minute.
Yes. Because over time, as they wait for the trap to spring, and the trap never springs,
The bewilderment turns into profound understanding.
they eventually realize there actually is no catch.
Yeah.
The kindness was just kindness.
Yes. And when that cognitive dissonance resolves, the shift is remarkable, isn't it?
It really is. The recipient moves from suspicion to relief to deep respect. They realize they have encountered a truly safe person.
And that is where the contagion of altruism begins. The ripple effect in action.
Yes, the ripple effect.
Because it isn't just the direct recipient who changes, it's the observers. The sociological impact of witnessing unconditional giving is huge.
The people watching this dynamic unfold, the suspicion, the steadfastness, the eventual trust, they eventually become supporters.
And more importantly, they start replicating this behavior within their own close circles.
It is mimetic desire, but for virtue rather than material goods, we imitate the behaviors modeled around us.
So one small act, given without expectation, gets inherited by the network.
It breaks the transactional deadlock not just for one relationship, but for an entire micro-community that witnesses it.
I love the idea that someone is just quietly watching you be nice to a coworker, watching that coworker be suspicious, watching you not take it personally, and then watching that relationship eventually thaw and become deeply authentic.
This is Powell.
And that observer thinks, wow, that is a much better way to live. I want to operate like that. You
Wow.
are literally rewriting the cultural source code around you just by refusing to play the ledger game.
You are modeling a new way of being, but it requires immense patience. You have to be willing to endure that initial period of awkwardness.
Which brings up a massive logistical question in my mind.
Okay, what is it?
If we are giving without immediate return and we're absorbing all this suspicion and we are passing favors forward rather than demanding them back,
Yes.
how does the loop ever close for us? If everyone is just pushing the goodwill outward, doesn't it just dissipate into the ether? Because we still have needs. We still need support.
We aren't invincible.
Right. If we completely abandon the reciprocal ledger, aren't we just setting ourselves up to be drained?
This is the ultimate test of the Ono-Curry philosophy. It argues that the loop does close, but on a timeline that we absolutely cannot control or predict.
It requires a complete surrender of our desire for immediate gratification and direct symmetry.
We have to trust the ecosystem rather than the individual transaction. Unconditional acts do return to you, but the timeline is chaotic.
It might be in 1 month, it might be in 5 years, or it might be in 20 years.
Exactly. And the scenarios where this loop closes are often when you are at your most vulnerable.
When you hit absolute rock bottom in your life.
Yes, when you are truly deeply in crisis and cannot offer anything in return, an unexpected supporter often appears.
And frequently, according to the sources, is someone you helped unconditionally in the distant past, or someone who benefited from a ripple you started.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the goodwill you put into the system finds its way back to you when you actually need it most, not when your ego demands a polite, immediate reciprocation.
There is an incredibly powerful metaphor for this time-lagged gratitude in the text. The teacher and the student.
It's a beautiful illustration of delayed impact.
I really want to unpack this because it perfectly illustrates how true reciprocation transcends time and direct exchange.
Let's walk through it.
So imagine a teacher who is just pouring their heart into guiding a student. They are staying late, offering advice, trying to instill character and resilience.
Really investing in them.
But at the time, the student is maybe rebellious, hormonal, or just young and distracted. They don't absorb it. There is absolutely no immediate payoff for the teacher.
No immediate thank you.
Right. No, thank you. You've changed the trajectory of my life. The teacher might retire thinking they completely failed that student.
It happens all the time.
But then, years later, as an adult facing their own complex life challenges, maybe a crisis in their own career or family, that student suddenly remembers a throwaway comment the teacher made.
It suddenly clicks.
Yes. They
Oh.
suddenly realize the true, profound meaning of what that teacher was trying to impart.
If we look at the neurobiology of memory and cognitive development, it makes perfect sense. The brain wasn't ready to process the gift of that wisdom until it had the experiential context to understand it.
It needed life experience.
Exactly. True repayment doesn't happen on the spot. It marinates over decades.
It has to age, like a fine wine. And what's fascinating is that true repayment isn't necessarily that student tracking the teacher down 20 years later to say thank you.
I mean, that's nice if it happens.
Sure, it's nice. But true repayment is when that student uses that wisdom to live a good, authentic life.
Yes.
True repayment is that student becoming a decent parent or a fair boss or a supportive friend. The student becoming a good person is the return on the teacher's investment.
Immediate tit-for-tat exchange is a profoundly shallow definition of returning a favor. It reduces human development to a retail transaction.
A retail transaction, that's spot on.
If we expand our definition of repayment to include the moral and emotional elevation of the people we help, we completely blow up the transactional model.
It totally shifts the burden. If the true repayment for a kindness is simply living a good life and passing it on, then my ledger is cleared just by going out and being a decent human being.
That's the beauty of it.
I don't owe the specific person who helped me a coffee. I owe it to the world to be a structurally sound member of society.
It elevates the entire concept of human interaction from a petty exchange of favors to a massive shared project of collective elevation.
Which brings us to the final actionable philosophy of this entire framework, the concept of accumulating toku, or virtue.
Yes, topu. This is crucial.
And I want to spend some time on this because accumulating virtue can sound a bit esoteric or like some grand, impossible monastic goal.
Like you have to become a saint.
Exactly. But it's actually incredibly practical. You don't have to quit your corporate job, sell all your possessions, and start a philanthropic foundation to accumulate toku.
It is not about grand, highly visible gestures. Virtue is accumulated in the microscopic, invisible moments of everyday life.
It's about small, morally aligned daily acts.
Like giving up a seat on the train without making eye contact to demand a thank you.
Right. Or speaking a kind, encouraging word to a junior employee who looks completely overwhelmed.
Or picking up a piece of trash on the sidewalk.
These actions seem completely isolated, but they accumulate. They build a foundation of virtue, this character architecture, that will eventually support you on that uncontrollable timeline we talked about.
Think of it as building an invisible safety net. Every time you pass kindness forward, every time you act without the expectation of return, you are weaving another thread into that net.
You are creating a culture of onokuri around you.
And the most beautiful, terrifying part is that you have no idea who's going to be holding the edges of that net when you eventually fall.
You just have to trust the system. You have to trust that if you put enough good into the water, the ripples will bounce off the shores of your community and eventually roll back to hold you up when you're drowning.
It requires a profound, radical level of trust in humanity, which is, ironically, the exact opposite of the fear, isolation, and suspicion we start with when we are suffering from the fight-or-flight response of receiving guilt.
It's a complete 180-degree shift in how you view the world. You move from, everyone is keeping score and I am drowning in debt to we're all building this invisible net together and it's okay for me to rest in it.
It's a very peaceful place to end up.
It really is. So as we start to bring this deep dive in for a landing, I want to bring it back directly to you, the listener.
Because it's a lot to process.
It is. Unpacking all of the psychology, the game theory, the Japanese philosophies, it can feel like a lot of pressure to suddenly change how you operate.
But there is an incredibly comforting takeaway here that I want to ensure we highlight.
Yes. If you are someone who is historically bad at receiving, if you're the person whose jaw tightens, whose stomach drops, who panics and feels that crushing guilt when someone does something nice for you, do not hate yourself.
You do not need to force yourself to become a perfectly gracious receiver overnight. You don't need to eliminate the anxiety by tomorrow.
Exactly. Because that very awkwardness, that visceral panic you feel, it actually hides a deep, profound sincerity.
It does. It is proof that you genuinely care about your impact on others.
You are panicking because you don't want to be a burden. You are panicking because you take human relationships incredibly seriously and you don't want to take advantage of anyone.
Your discomfort is literal evidence of your empathy. It is simply empathy that has been tangled up and weaponized by a toxic transactional ledger system.
Empathy tangled in a ledger. That is perfectly stated. So the goal here isn't to kill your empathy. The goal is to keep the empathy and throw away the ledger.
Precisely. By letting go of the panic of immediate repayment, by understanding the mechanics of your own nervous system, and by actively choosing to pass kindness forward at our own pace.
Shifting our internal architecture from Ongeshi to Onokuri.
Yes, we slowly build incredibly rich, profound human relationships. We stop trading favors, and we start actually building community.
So what does this all mean for you tomorrow morning? It means you can take a deep breath the next time someone offers you a hand or buys you a coffee.
You have options now.
You have the right to gracefully, honestly refuse it if you simply don't have the capacity. Or you have the power to accept it, let the warmth of it wash over you without guilt, and simply pass it forward to someone else when you are ready.
You are not trapped in a tennis match.
You are part of the water. And as you go about your day today, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, based on that story of the teacher and the student.
It's a powerful thought.
We know that the true impact of a kind word might not bloom in someone's mind for 20 years. It might lay dormant until the exact moment they need it. So ask yourself this. Whose 20-year-old seed of kindness are you benefiting from today, right in this very moment, without even realizing it?